meeting is now being recorded.
Like it said. We're going to start off just by going around the room and taking attendance. We had some people drop out this morning of coming in here, so it's a pretty empty room to start. But Mike Hanks, am here.
Kathy O'Brien with Sun Harbor Marina representing Clean Marina.
Anyala Varant with the Department of Pesticide Regulation. And Jeannie Mesha, Supervisor for the Non-Point Source Unit at the State Water Board Division of Water Quality.
We may have more people. All right, I think we're going to have more people trickle in as time goes on. I'll have them introduce themselves a little while later. Who do we have on the phone today?
This is Michael Tripp with LA County Beaches and Harbors.
This is Vivian Matuk with the California State Parks Division of Boating and Waterways and Coastal Commission.
Vanessa Metz with the Coastal Commission in Arcata.
This is Lina Ceballos with the State Lands Commission.
This is Maren Farnham with the State Lands Commission.
This is Chris Shawnee with the State Lands Commission.
This is Kelly Tate and Karen Holman from the Port of San Diego.
Greg Shem, the boat yard, Marina Del Rey.
Chris Miller, City of Newport Beach.
Driving Boat Wash, Sweden.
Shana Rappaport with the Los Angeles Water Board.
Shana, you're very, very faint.
Uh-oh.
Chris Miller, City of Newport Beach.
Hi, this is Barry Snyder with EMEC Foster Wheeler.
Colin Anderson from American Chemet.
David Elias with the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Jeremy Haas from the San Diego Water Quality Control Board.
Matt Peterson, California Professional Divers Association.
Ray Heimstra with Orange County Coastkeeper.
And let's take a pause for a second so we can catch up. California Professional Dive. And that was Orange County what?
Coastkeeper.
Coastkeeper, great.
And I have all this recorded too, so.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We just have one more person step in the room. All right.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Oh, you're not late. No worries. Yeah.
I'm John Berg with the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association.
Ralph Schottel, AMEC Foster Wheeler.
Is there anybody else on the line that has identified themselves?
Tommy Roses.
Okay, John Tommy. Okay, and I'll do another little attendance check after the first presentation just to see if anybody dropped in late. I wanted to do one piece of housekeeping. There's been requests in previous meetings to send out emails without referencing everybody's email address because people don't want their personal information going out. However, I have had a lot of difficulty sending out Outlook meeting invites without everybody's email address included. Otherwise, I try to send all documents on a BCC list, but for meeting invites, I cannot figure out a way to do it without everybody's contact information being visible. If anybody knows a workaround to address this issue, because I know that there's individuals in this group that don't want their information shared, please notify me because I do not know of a better workaround, and I apologize for having to send out meeting invitations with your contact information listed. Okay. So with that taken care of, I'd like to go around the room, around the phone line for any updates from members. Do we have anybody in the room that wants to make an update? This is a small room, so maybe not.
I do not.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody on the phone that would like to announce any updates? Really? Nobody has any updates? I think this is the first time I've ever had no updates. Okay. Well, it's supposed to take half an hour. Usually it does, but since that's not the case, we can keep going forward. Okay. Let's see. So I guess we're going to just, if there's no updates, one last time, no updates. We're going to skip right to David Elias's presentation from the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board on creative solutions to the marine debris challenge in California. This will be just a verbal presentation. There's not going to be anything to look at while you do it.
Actually, that's an incorrect title.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's I'm talking about in-water vessel hull cleaning.
Oh.
Studies.
I made an error, and that will be fixed. Right. It's correct in the purpose, but it's incorrect in the title. I apologize for that. We can fix that.
I'm not going to talk now. I'm just so upset. Since that was recorded, that was a joke. Just. Do you want me to get started?
Yes, please.
So I don't have anything real formal prepared. I did send you, Michael, the BMP that we've been using for many years now, and is also posted on the State Water Board's website as guidance for in-water vessel hull cleaning.
And I'm just going to interrupt you real fast. I'm going to send that out to the group after the presentation or after the meeting has concluded, and that will also be an attachment on the meeting notes, which will be sent out to the group and then also posted on the Coastal Commission's website.
Is there any reason you can't send it out now? I had to assume people would have a chance to look at it and ask me questions.
Yeah, I can. You're just going to see what I'm doing while I do it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, I'll just give you a brief history. We began working on pollution associated with in-water vessel hull cleaning, and it was kicked off due to issues we were having with the Sassoon Bay Reserve Fleet, which was a bunch of, in Benicia, which was a bunch of World War II era vessels that were polluting. And they were doing in-water vessel hull cleaning without any filtration, and we determined that it wasn't safe, and we required the cleaning of ships. And this was the Maritime Administration was doing this work. We required that their ships be cleaned in dry dock. And so they began a process of trying to figure out a way to do it so that they could be in compliance with water quality laws. And they funded some studies, and I participated in the drafting of those studies. I mean, the work plans and we were able to get enough data to generate this BMP, which limits copper discharges after cleaning to 100 micrograms per liter, and I think zinc discharges to, let's see, I'm looking at my BMP right now. I think it's 700 ppb. So
700. What was that?
Parts per billion.
Okay.
Micrograms per liter. So these were achievable with this very simple and off-the-shelf filtration system. And we put this out there because we knew that at the time no one was doing any sort of filtration, and we knew that this should be easily implemented. And since that time, some people have used it, and when it is used, they've actually been able to achieve much lower concentrations of discharge. So with this simple filtration system, you can actually do a lot better than these numbers. So at some point, I've considered lowering this. Now, we're sort of waiting for State Board to move forward with determining BAT for this process. I don't think at this time a lot of progress has been made on doing that. So this is sort of still the standard that we have in our region, and I think in the state, and maybe even in the country. The reason I'm talking is there's some exciting. So one study isn't enough to determine BAT. There would be a lot of pushback. So what's exciting is the Maritime Administration working with the University of Maryland, is funding a bunch of other studies and with a bunch of vendors, and that started this year. And they've done some sampling out in Maryland recently, and we're doing some this month. A few more ships in Alameda, or up in Northern California. And my hope is that with this addition, if we get more and more good data, we'll be able to sort of determine what is achievable, what is BAT for in-water vessel hull cleaning. And I'm talking about metal discharges. I'm not talking about invasive species. However, I have been working with Chris on this, and the studies they are doing are also looking at invasive species mitigation. So whereas my study that we did years ago did not look at invasive species. So I'd hope to have a report, something to show you, but they haven't finalized the report yet from the testing they did in Maryland recently. But when that comes out, it'll be available. And my hope is that, at some point there will be enough information that we can write a permit for this that would be more formal, an MPDS permit. And that's, I think, I guess I have time to answer some questions, but that's just what I wanted to share.
Yeah, this is Jeannie from the State Water Board.
Hi,
and you mentioned that you're waiting for the State Board to work on BAT, or Best Achievable Technologies. Can you elaborate on that? Who is
that was it was Dominic Gregorio had the project, and then he gave it to someone who worked for him. And I haven't heard anything in a long time, so I don't know what happened.
So Dominic retired about 5 years ago.
Yeah, so he handed it off to someone else.
Okay, and were we going to adopt it into a statewide NPDES permit, or put it in the inland surface? No, not. It would be the enclosed bays, and no, probably not. Estuary plan.
No, I think it would have been appropriate to have a NPDES permit. But but they were trying to get some studies moving forward, and they thought and they had plans, but I don't think it moved forward.
Okay.
But now the University of Maryland and the Maritime Administration are doing studies that are probably comparable. The studies that the State Board wanted to do did not just address this issue. They wanted to study a bunch of other discharges as well, such as ballast water.
Okay.
Is the filtration system in an enclosed area that the ship is contained in?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Well, you mentioned about filtration, and if this is in water, when you're doing the cleaning on the ship, is the ship in some type of enclosure, even though it's still in the water?
No.
So you just have some kind of filtration system running in the general vicinity of the ship?
So if you, so basically the scrubber has a vacuum applied to it. Okay. And if you look at the BMP, it describes the unit, but it has a vacuum applied that sucks up all the effluent from the scrubbing, and then that is brought to the surface and run through a filtration system.
Interesting. Okay.
And it works.
And you gave out two numbers at the very beginning, and I didn't quite follow what the significance of them were. You said 100 micrograms per liter, and then you said 700 parts per billion.
Yeah. So 100 micrograms per liter for copper.
Oh, okay.
700 for zinc. So the system's more efficient at removing copper than zinc.
Okay, and zinc was the 700 parts per billion?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So everyone should have a copy of the BMP if you can read it.
Yeah, I was able to send that email out.
And so how did the University of Maryland, or how did you get connected with the University of Maryland?
I think Chris Ciani, who's on the call, I think he recommended that I be part of the advisory team.
Uh-huh.
Is that right, Chris?
Yeah. I was part of the organizing team, and we were looking for folks to invite to be part of a technical advisory committee to help provide some input on the protocols that we were developing to do these tests. And David was one of the experts we brought in.
Okay. Cool.
So any other questions or thoughts?
Do you have any questions on the phone?
And then who was it from State Board?
Jeannie Mesha.
So Jeannie, why don't we talk offline and
yeah,
and it would be great if this got resurrected over there.
Sure. Yeah. I'd be happy to help try to get that going.
So I'm not gonna stay on for the rest of the call.
You know, we have actually one more question in the room.
Yeah, just so you know, once I'm done here, I'm gonna sign off.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. John Berg with the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. I'm not sure if either you or maybe Chris can answer this, but is this BMP, would this be acceptable to the Southern California cleaning inside the breakwater in San Pedro?
You know, I don't know. I think that it depends. One of the things is if they have if the water body is impaired for copper, they may not accept those limits. They may have much stricter limits. I know people are trying to get testing done down there. I'm willing to help facilitate discussions because I've done a fair amount of it up here in the San Francisco Bay. But where we're doing the testing, the waters are not impaired for copper. So,
yeah, and I'll jump in there too, David. LA Long Beach is impaired for copper, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board down here has said that the BMP for San Francisco would not apply. So the discharge limits down here would be consistent with the California Toxics Rule.
But I will say that this system, I have seen it work and achieve non-detect for copper. So the system might work, but the goal may be different.
Yeah, one of the goals for this project that David mentioned in Alameda was to see how well these systems can remove copper and potentially be eligible to get permits down in Long Beach.
Thank you.
And when you say ship, how large of a vessel are you referring to?
This could be used on any size, but most of these studies have been done on very large vessels.
I felt like we had a couple questions on the phone, but didn't get to speak.
This is Shana from the LA Water Board. The information that you were...
Hey, Shana, can you speak up? We still can't hear you that well.
Is that better? I'm not sure.
No. You're pretty faint, Shana. I don't know. Keep trying, though. Keep talking.
The information that you guys were saying got to meet CTR. Now we have not approved for the impaired water bodies.
You have an echo too. This is
yeah.
Maybe you should call back in.
Can Shana type in her question? I'm going to hang up and call back and see if that's...
All right, I'll stay on until you get back on.
This is Jeannie at the State Board. I think Shana was just confirming the information about the, what was the water body you were asking about, John?
San Pedro Bay.
San Pedro.
Inside the breakwater.
Oh, okay. I think Shana was just confirming.
So while we're waiting, have you and David, have you done any research or looked to see how things compare to the in-water cleaning that's being done within containment?
I'm not sure. You mean like within dry dock?
No, it's not a dry dock. It's basically like, think of it as driving the vessel into a swimming pool. The swimming pool closes up, and then they do the cleaning. get things to settle out, and then the boat can depart. Now, it's not necessarily going to work on a Navy vessel or a container ship, but it would certainly work on the smaller vessels.
Is this the guy out of Moss Beach?
I'm not familiar with him. The Port of San Diego was doing some studies in San Diego with a company, but I didn't get his actual location. I thought he was out of the country.
What I've seen is that those are able to, and then you can pump all the water out, right?
I don't believe they're pumping the water out. They're just filtering out the sediment.
Oh, well, then you still have the copper.
That's not correct, by the way. They are pumping the water out.
Yeah, I think that if you have a situation where you're containing all the water, and then and so what this is permitting in-water vessel hull cleaning with the discharge to waters of the state, right? So it's putting the water back in. But if you have a certain amount of water and then you're pulling it and then you're containing it and then like say you're sending it to the sewer, well that's fantastic. If you can do it that way, that would be great.
That's not what's happening in this situation. This is Matt Peterson with the California Professional Divers Association. David, if I could just clarify, I think, and this is I ask for this clarification every time you speak about this issue. We're talking about vessels covered under the vessel general permit, correct? Not pleasure craft, which is what the question was about with the bag filtration system.
No, not necessarily. The discharge of copper when you clean the bottom of a boat is it's not permitted. And it's why we have impaired waters around marinas. So it's an issue for any size boat. In other words, if you go and ask and say, "Hey, can I scrub my boat and I'm going to discharge all this copper? Is that okay?" We can't permit that, right?
Right.
So it's just sort of it's a problem.
Well, let me ask you this then. So the systems you're talking about for using on large vessels are not applicable to small pleasure craft. How do we address that?
Well, it's not cut and dried like that. I mean, if you can run a trash pump and pull the effluent from what you're scrubbing and put it through the filter, it's applicable.
Yeah, but the devices you're talking about are in the tens or twenties of thousands of dollars, which is not reasonable for the average hull cleaner who's cleaning 30-foot sailboats.
What device are you talking about?
You're talking about a brush cart with a vacuum system and filter system. That's how are you going to do that when somebody's getting charged $75 to have their 30-foot sailboat cleaned?
I don't talk about the brush cart in the BMP. It's just the filtration.
It sure looks like that's what you're talking about in that BMP page you just sent out. There's a diagram showing a brush cart.
See here. Well,
I don't see it.
The scrubber unit.
The scrubber unit with the discharge pump.
Yeah, so
that's
you
can
have a scrubber unit. I mean, whatever unit you have, you can put a pipe next to it and try to collect the copper.
Okay, I guess the point I'm trying to make is what you're describing is applicable to large vessels. And we're talking about as if this is just going to be directly transferable to the pleasure craft hull cleaning industry. And I'm telling you, based on my 24 years experience as a professional hull cleaner, that is not the case. And I'd like to know your thoughts about it.
Well, I keep telling you my thoughts, and you don't seem to want to hear them. So, should I say it again, or?
Well, what you just said to me was, let me throw at you what I'm hearing you say. You tell me if I'm wrong. The machines that are being used to clean large vessels, you're saying we can use those machines on small pleasure craft. Am I wrong?
No, you are wrong.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that whenever you have an ablative coating with a biocide in it, and you scrub it, you discharge a lot of biocide, and there is no permit to do that. So we need to move forward with figuring out better ways to contain that or to avoid it. And this BMP, you may need to modify it to a different scrubber unit, but this is a starting point. But if you ask any water quality regulator if it's okay for you to discharge that biocide when you scrub the boat, they'll say no. It is not okay. And there could be, the fact that there hasn't been a lot of enforcement actions is just because we haven't caught up with it yet. As far as I know, it's not permitted.
I 100% understand what you just said.
Okay.
All right. And you clarified, we're not talking about using brush carts on 30-foot sailboats. So, okay. Gotcha.
I have a question. It's John Tommy. Whose jurisdiction is it to enforce the discharges when the divers scrub the vessels and the paint, the copper, and the biocides are discharged? Who's liable or who's in charge of the enforcement of them not having permits?
I would think you could start you could start down at the city county level. The state of California definitely, our agency is concerned about it, and then you could get right up to the United States, the EPA.
So let's use Marina del Rey where I'm at. So the county beaches and harbors could inspect what they're planning to do, because this is an old problem. So I'm glad it's getting addressed. And then they could see if they're compliant in what they're doing and test it somehow. And then they're liable, the county is, because they're making the money off of it, I think. So it directly attaches them to responsibility as well. And then they would have to report it. Their duty is to report it to the other agencies, right? Like EPA, regional water, the pesticide regulatory. I mean, it ties in a lot of different agencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really have the staff to follow hull cleaners around when they're in the marina.
Well, that's what the police say when the criminals are doing all their work too.
Well, basically, I'm doing I'm doing my best to sort of move things forward.
Yeah, I'm not putting you down. It's a problem with everybody who doesn't have enough money.
So like what I brought up was I did this, I did this and it pushed things forward a little bit. At least it says, you should be using these BMPs if you're discharging these waters of the state. And my hope is that if we get more information and if state board, then state board could do it statewide. They could do something more formally.
Right.
And then if that happened, we could start to maybe get some funding to deal with it, or it would be clearer.
Yeah, I think the primary responsibility is on the divers and the dive company, because they're the ones that are actually performing the work that is questionable, whether that it's actually working and what the discharge is. It's basically a 404 violation. So anyway, I think I'll talk to Mike Tripp about it.
It is a little. I mean, I haven't spent as much time talking about all the regulatory issues, but it is the product. It is tricky because the product is still legal to put on your boat, and the product is designed to discharge copper. So,
but it's not compliant to discharge the biocide and the copper and the other metals and the zincs and all that. I mean, it's
so when I first started working on this, we had a better way to do it, which was pull your boat out and collect it and send this stuff to the sanitary sewer. And that's what we required. But, in a lot of boat yards, you do have that option rather than cleaning in the water. You can have that increase in copper discharge be collected.
Right.
So.
Go ahead, sorry.
And then, honestly, I don't know. There's always new information, but like, for instance, if someone's very careful with their sailboat and they just got a piece of carpet and they're just barely taking off a little bit of, algae or something, is that really a problem? I don't know. I haven't seen. I don't know if that's as bad.
Right. Well, I think the test results that have been recently done for the Marinas show that there's all kinds of stuff in there, and some of it's through the paint failure. Some of it's got to be from the divers, and then, and the responsibilities on the divers. But first, it's the vessel owner, because it's his paint or her paint. They're the ones that have retained the divers, whoever's cleaning it, and then they're responsible equally to make sure that it's not illegally discharging material that's not allowed.
Right.
So I think it goes back to the county that they almost need a protocol that this should be going through, and especially since they're going to have to pay for the cleanup. There's going to have to be some adjustment to how that's being done in the future, how it will be done in the future. But thanks for your answers. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm trying to find. I have some photos of this guy. His name is Michael Zlotkin, and he did some. He did some of his own tests, and you should see what he collected. I'll tell you. I'll sign off, and if I find this photo, I used to have it in one of my. Do you remember that one, Chris, that shows the purple?
You're talking about the commercial fishing boat in Zlotkin's system, and the water looks like somebody slaughtered a cow in it, correct?
Exactly. I thought I could share that, and then it's.
Well, before you share that, let me share this with you. I guarantee what he's describing there, and I've gone back and forth with Zlotkin about this. He's claiming that what you're looking at in that picture is typical of an in-water hull cleaning of a pleasure craft. What he's actually done is cleaned a boat with a sloughing paint, a paint that should never be cleaned in the water because of its uncontrolled release, which that picture is witness to. This is not what happens when you clean a hybrid, ablative, or a hard paint, or in fact most ablatives. In this meeting, I've gone back and forth with him about the inaccuracy of that. So please don't share that and infer to people that this is what happens every time your diver cleans.
No, I'm not. I just it does show that but if you're looking at the exposure to the diver, that's more what I thought was interesting.
Well, I
find that interesting. We talked earlier. We talked earlier about, but this is one of these things where you collect all the water. And I will share that if I can find it. But I won't characterize it in any fashion. But I don't think I have it.
Thank you. I have that picture somewhere.
Well, you can share. You can share it then.
Okay.
And I believe that Michael Zlotkin and his system is what the woman earlier was referring to about
if
being
that's
used.
it, yeah, then I am familiar with that. And I don't know. And if they're doing it down in San Diego, that's great. Then he's got some people that are interested because he was doing it up here near Santa Cruz.
Yeah, he's based in Santa Cruz, I think.
Okay. Thank you, David. We went a little bit over time on that, but we had extra time, and I appreciate you hanging in there for us. If you are driving in the car and you're not speaking, please put your phone on mute. We're going to have something little different than most of our presentations. We're actually going to have a video show that's been prepared, a prepared presentation from John Tommy, who just spoke moments ago. And we're going to have the presentation first, and then John Tommy's going to be on the phone to answer questions afterward. So let me just set that up.
The YouTube link is on that agenda you sent to. I don't know if they saw that, but I put all the references there as well.
Yeah.
They're all in order as I went through them on the video.
Okay. Okay, and are you ready, John Tommy? I'm going to start right now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Go for it.
Cool. Let's make sure. Yeah, it's a movie.
Hi, it's John Tommy Roses.
That's not loud enough.
I'm a U.S.
Can you guys hear that?
certified builder of documented vessels and master shipwright. Have been for about 40 years.
Okay, hold on one second. This is not loud enough. It is all the way up. Yeah.
Do you have speakers that we can get?
Not that I know of. That's as loud as this goes. Yeah. Shoot. Because I have to play through the phone. Right. Hold on one second, guys. I don't think I can. Yeah. I didn't realize how quiet it was. I could play it on my phone. But then I want to be linked.
Looks like they're setting up this machine. Can you hear me better now?
No. Sorry.
What Shane is saying?
Can we hear her better?
Oh.
Yeah, I think we need speakers.
All guests have been muted.
Sorry.
All guests have been unmuted.
I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to make it louder.
It wasn't horrible. If you want to try again, and we'll all just be very quiet. Turn our volumes up.
We can't hear in here. No.
Try capital.
I want to that are being omitted is the galvanic group.
Hey, Mike, can I try something?
The connection with the Marinas.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me see if the audio is good from my end. Maybe I can do it from my system here.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay, here we go.
For the Fall Marina Interagency Committee and the work group.
Oh, wait, can you pause it for a second?
Yeah, could you hear that?
Yeah, I could hear it better. Can you play it on your computer?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I've
Okay,
got it up to my music system.
Okay, but I need to have you be the presenter so you can share it on the Global Meet so that everybody can see it.
Well, the link is on the, if they can get it on YouTube, but if they can't, then I don't know how to do that thing that you're saying. I don't mind doing it, but what do I have to do? And do we have time to do that?
Let's see. Oh, okay. So now we got a speaker.
Carol Whitmore.
It's nice having the tech, but it's a battle to get it to all work.
Yeah, every single.
So, John, Tommy, what are you logged into the Global Meet?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I just saw the phone number and password.
Okay, no problem.
If you can email it to me, then that's fine.
All right, well, Mike just got some speakers, and now he's going to get a power cord. So
all right.
Hang on for a moment.
Sure.
Oh, it's on.
He's also connected with the Marina.
Yeah,
Okay.
we may not be able to do that.
Yeah. Hey, John, Tommy.
How you doing?
Hey, good. Well, not great. I don't think we're going to be able to do your presentation as is. Our options is to have this play while you speak over it. I know you didn't really prepare for that, or to do it otherwise. I'd like to know what you feel comfortable with.
Is there anyone who maybe we could share their screen who is connected to YouTube, maybe?
Yeah. I don't know how the microphone would pick up the audio, though.
Oh. Who has
That's what I was starting to say, that I tried the audio from my end. I think you can hear it if I
Yeah,
did
let's
it
do
on
that.
my end.
No, but he's not on.
But he's not. Oh.
Let me turn it on and tell me what's the good audio.
Shayna, are you on the line?
I am on the line.
Can you share your screen and run the YouTube?
This whole thing. And the things I want to talk about that are being how's the audio omitted?
Am I playing it? Yeah.
Is
no, we
the
don't have
galvanic corrosion on the anti-fouling paint on the vessels. There's also connection with the marina. Is that audio good enough or no?
Yeah. But we don't have the video to go with it.
Well, if you just start at the very beginning, I'll sync it at the very beginning too.
Play it at the same time.
I apologize for this technical mix-up, people.
I stood up on mine.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about it, just how it goes.
Yeah. Okay. So whoever was playing the audio, I'm going to start it in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, it's John Tommy Roses. I'm a U.S. Coast Guard certified builder of documented vessels and master shipwright. Have been for about over 40 years. And I'm giving this presentation for the Fall Marina Interagency Committee and the work group. This whole thing. And the things I want to talk about that are being omitted is the galvanic corrosion on the anti-fouling paint on the vessels. There's also connection with the marina shore power defects and on the vessel's electrical systems. That would be the bonding and grounding. And I have some good information on that. I'm also going into the OSHA and Cal-OSHA, US EPA, DTSC, safety, pollution regulations, and, for compliant vessel anti-fouling coating replacement processes. And also I'm going into the electrical on the vessels and the marinas because they're all affecting the bottom paint. Any bottom paint or anti-fouling paint that has metal is going to be affected. It doesn't matter how noble the metal is really, it's going to come off. And so I'm going to go through this thing. I know there's not a lot of time and we can discuss it more, but I'm going to provide all the links as we go through this. And I'll make a list and email them as well to Mike. Okay, so my suggestion is they inspect the vessel's electrical bonding and grounding on all voltage systems. That's, when the boat's in the water. Inspecting test the vessel at its dock and the surrounding waters. I have the instrument to show you what could be used to test for stray current voltages through the various sources. The way to correct it, and there's numerous reports and guidelines and actually regulations on that. And I know from being a shipwright all these years and having to build Coast Guard inspected compliant vessels that in the boat yards I've worked in and shipyards, most of them aren't compliant, and it's a problem, including electrocution. And these are some of the reasons that I went over already. Improper grounding, radio. That also involves bonding. Bonding and grounding is two different things. They mix them, and it's a problem. There's improper hull surface preparation and contaminants. That's another issue with these bottom paints. We call them bottom paints, and I probably it's easier to say. But even hands touching it, the finger oils can be a contaminant, and there's air contaminant. They use air to blow the hull clean, and with high pressure air, that can have oil from the compressors, and that'll contaminate it. Sometimes they use heaters, and in one instance in Seattle, they had that new Micron 22 that came out. That was like, 35 years ago. No, it was more than that. It was 1977. And it's like 41 years. They had diesel heaters, and it was spraying these nanoparticles of diesel, and it was fisheye in the paint. So I figured out what it was, and they quit doing it, but it was for international. The other thing they don't do is there's not sufficient coating thickness. They don't measure it with a mill gauge mechanically, and they should. And they're not requiring the certified applicators like I was for every coating. And so there's no telling who's put these paints on. And sometimes they have these seminars, but the salesmen don't really know either. So, it's a problem. They also miss the overcoat windows for both the barrier coats. That's the epoxy barrier coat that goes on after the hull's all clean, and the anti-fouling coats. There's a window that those two have to be put on. Those windows are missed, and they either are too early or exceed the times recommended. There's also another issue in the shipyard and boatyards that there's undocumented removal and disposal of the removed coating, debris, and the non-compliant containment of the coatings removal. In other words, they're not covering the vessel properly and during the application, and they spray coatings, and that includes top side coatings, we call them, that aren't on the bottom. And I work and live in Marina del Rey, and when I go by the boat yard, it's one of the yards in the marina. I've seen the dust come out of those tents that they make. They're kind of rigged up, and it actually goes on the state line across the street and pollutes it. So there's an exposure there, and I've got the agencies that have jurisdiction. I didn't put in the air quality, but that's an obvious one. But I put in the other one, boards of U.S. paint. Okay, so I'm going to jump to the reference material. They kind of got it lined up. Galvanic corrosion, that's what's burning off the paints. And it's important to understand that because, and this is from NACE.org, they specialize in this. And I'll provide that list of these websites that I got this information from to make this easier, because I'm not a professional presentation person, so I'm just using their stuff to help explain it. But you folks will have the links to go over it on your own time. So they go into the galvanic corrosion pretty thoroughly. This is the one type of solution that most boats don't have on the vessel part. Here shows the current flow with the different noble metals in the water. Let's say there's a bronze or brass propeller, any of these through-hull fittings. That current flow is going to go to the other vessel, to the aluminum stern drive or any other metal. But also, the boats are electrifying around the vessel itself. So all these vessels, and I can show you the meter that tests it, but all these vessels are burning off their own paint, besides creating these trace current and stray current flows to each other. And you can see where the grounds are bonded through to each boat instead of being isolated, and that's the problem. So this is a galvanic isolator, very important to have, and I'll go into the bonding. This is from the Department of Pesticide, the state one, and they talk about all this interaction with electrical conductivity, that's what they call it. There is Coast Guard specs, OSHA specs, and all that to cover that, but they're starting to be aware of it, but they're not connecting it all together like I've done today. Okay, so I'm going to jump to this. Here's the isolator from the shore power, which is 3-wire, and it shows the grounds and the ground fault indicators. And then it shows here optional galvanic isolator. Well, that shouldn't be optional ever. That needs to happen. And I know the Marina del Rey Harbor and Marinas got a lot of issues there. All of them leak current, and I can see it on the boats. It actually leaves a mark, and it can be tested. I wanted to work that testing out with Michael Tripp of the Beaches and Harbors there, but we haven't got too far with it. This shows the current not balanced that opens or trips the breaker. This shows leaking voltage to the ground. It shows that this is the ground. This is the ground here, and this is the hot wire that also leaks. So there's a problem with that. This is a shore power receptacle to the vessel. But there's a lot of issues with electrical now. They don't have proper electricians working on the boats. This is a pretty good diagram of the current code which the Marina shore power isn't code that I could see. And most of them have the old 3-wire, which isn't code anymore. It has to be 4, so that the neutral isn't connected with the ground like it used to be. And even though they don't show it here, it is right here. There's the ground. And it's tied to the neutral. So that's not code anymore. Hasn't been for like 10 years, but they haven't kept up with it. Okay, moving along. This is a Navy document on interaction of anti-fouling paints and steel. Why that's important is, even though a lot of recreational vehicles aren't steel, some are, but mostly they're not. They're fiberglass and some wood. But the steel is the same kind of component that reacts to the copper, and it can corrode the iron. But it can also, in the same way, through the galvanic action, corrode the paint because it's in a charged anthroid-cathode situation. So this is a story about the hot marina, that's what they call them, when they're not wired right or got some other issues. This shows the current when the AC ground fault isn't working, and it goes through and bleeds current in, and so all this water starts. This is supposed to be a boat. It's a simple diagram, but this is getting into electrical shock and causes drowning. And that's another important safety issue. This explains it pretty well. That article. This is the one from Boat USA about marina dock safety and electrical shock drowning. It's actually a big problem. This is the E9 is the older electrical system report that's under ABYC, what they recommend is compliance. So I've provided that. This is the new one. It's also the one that the Coast Guard uses. This is the Coast Guard copy. And they talk about grounding, currents and all that, overcurrent. This whole thing's on electric. And it's a CFR stuff, but I'm providing that. This is a water board reports on the Marina del Rey and the amounts of copper and all that. Some of you folks know about it. I worked with Regional Water to get the Marina del Rey waters cleaned up, which we got approved by the EPA a few years ago. And that's a pretty good report. This is the plume of the copper. Shows the distribution. This is the main channel if you're not familiar with it. And it doesn't really flush well. The original design had the opening of the harbor over here, and it was round. And they wanted to maximize the slip, because this is still the largest man-made harbor in the world. For marinas and all that. But there's still quite a bit of copper in there. These are higher concentrations here, but I'll provide that report if you don't have it. This shows the Marina del Rey basins. They show about 5,000 slips. It's closer to 6,500, but Michael Tripp would give an accurate number. They keep redesigning it, so we're losing the small boats, but getting larger vessels. This is one by paint.org. They talk about the regulatory activity in the state. And it's a pretty good thing to look at. Article. This is the U.S. EPA's document on this subject. I'm going to look at the title. Yeah. They talk about the flushing, boat cleaning, and all that. I'll get into the divers and how they're doing illegal 404 discharges. This is from GTSC, shows how they stand and what they're supposed to use and keep track of, but it's not happening it's not too compliant as far as the yards aren't. This is from the Coast Guard. This is from Army Corps. They actually have jurisdiction. They have this guidelines book. I'm going to provide that. It goes into the grounding, and but they're not connected to the paints and the other issues. The other issues that happen with this bad and improper electricians doing electrical work on boats is that they're connecting the bond straps to the grounds, and that's causing electrical stray currents to burn off the tin and zinc anodes, and that's another pollutant, and it's tons and tons. This is the OSHA. They have authority and jurisdiction as well. So does Cal OSHA. This is on the shipyard industry standards, and it should be used in the local shipyard. That's the CFR for it. I'm providing all these links that I did. This is on shipbreaking from OSHA, but when people do repairs, this same situation happens. It's not just when they break the ship up, but this goes into what's around, including lead, chromate in the paints on the inside of the boat. When the water gets in the boat and it's cooked, it starts cooking this stuff, and the bilge gets pumped out, it's discharging all this interior metal, which is another thing to look at as far as throwing interior metal to the exterior and then that reacting to the galvanic corrosion. Let's see where we're here. This gets into the blasting, which is basically sandblasting, but they use abrasive. This is CFRs on coatings and all that from OSHA. This is on safety on longshoremen and commercial diving operations, all that. Quite extensive. This is the OSHA requirements on marinas, which I know if they went over there, there'd need to be an investigation at Marina del Rey. This is a DTSC's recommendation on using abrasive materials to blast. They're using soda and different things. It's in a soda ash or something like that, but there it is right there. They use garnet. But they're not, the yards aren't dealing with the stuff that comes off of it. I've seen them dump it in the dumpsters. Okay, this is from Department of Pesticide, and they have quite a bit on that. A lot of you folks are agency people, if you know about this, but I'm just putting it out there. This is an old 1990, I think it was 78 study on copper-based antipronic. There's a really good, a lot of good information on that older stuff. This is on the leaching. Excuse me. This one has references on the nano-sized copper that comes off the commercial anti-fouling paint, which is pretty interesting. Even though I'm not a scientist, I do study. This talks about life cycle contributions of copper from vessel painting and maintenance. I have this highlighted because this medium-duty 3M pad is actually called Scotch-Brite, and it's an abrasive, and the divers, all of them use it, and they're actually sanding the boats underwater. I got pictures of it, but that's illegal. That's the 404 discharge. That being Section 404. Okay.
No, we can have a big argument about what you just said.
Another one on in the water, hull cleaning. This is from
please hold all questions until the very end because it's a recording.
This one's from, this is my copy. This is a document that they did a test on all this that we're talking about from the Suez Bay. Now this is the handheld meter for conductivity that you can use in your own situations to test the voltages yourself. And that's why I was trying to get Michael Tripp to buy and let me do the testing. Maybe the state can knock some money loose so we can test the water. Because if they don't deal with the voltages, whatever we do with the chemical content and the metals isn't going to matter because it's still charged inside and out. This is the manual for it. I'm going to provide that. It tells me what it can do. This is from, this is on electrical chemical corrosion in the particles and all that. This is from paint.org. This is a copper-based anti-fouling paint. This is a ship's encyclopedia. It's really good. It's done by IMF and the International Treaty, so you can see some of the terminology. Some of you have jurisdiction in the larger shipyards and the berthing areas, and this would be handy for you. Actually used to work at Delta Marine, which is a cracker, a long time ago. Yeah, this is the IMO. So I said IMF, it's IMO. IMO, yeah. It's the International Maritime Organization. This is another document they put out. Okay, here's the diver standing underwater. You can see all the stuff coming off. There's a giant wound. Here's the Scotch-Brite. So they're grinding it off, and it's discharging the water. You can see the plumes coming off. And some of them have air sanders down there, like this guy. So you can see all the stuff that comes off. The other thing I want to bring up is that all this growth is happening because the anti-fouling quits working after a few months, and everything's growing back on there. And if it wasn't true, then why is all that stuff there? I mean, it doesn't take that long, and it's already growing. We put boats in the water that people have painted, taking them out, and they already were growing like there was no bottom paint. And this is another, this is about hull resistant management, which includes growth and different kinds of paint. Anyway, I'm wrapping it up. There's a timeline here I probably went over, but I tried to cover all these points, and when this presentation is online and I'm going to attend by a conference call, I can, help answer some of the questions on if there's time. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye. Hi, it's John Tommy Rose. I'm a U.S. Coast Guard certified builder.
John Tommy, are you there on the line?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Let's open up the floor to questions.
All right, this is Matt Peterson with the CPDA. Again, I apologize for my emotional outburst a moment ago. I would like to point out to the speaker, to John Tommy, that many of the statements he just made about in-water hull cleaning of pleasure craft are incorrect, and based on what I presume would be his zero experience in doing this particular maintenance task. In particular, 2 points. One, he mentioned that anti-fouling paints fail after a couple of months in the water. What he's describing is, well, he's under the misconception that anti-fouling paints absolutely stop fouling growth from occurring, and that's just not realistic. That's an unrealistic expectation. And anybody who owns a boat knows this, that anti-fouling paints will retard fouling growth. They will not stop it. And that's why in-water hull cleaning is a necessary maintenance task, because the paints, as they're formulated now, with copper being the most common biocide, They just don't have the horsepower, as it were, to completely stop any fouling growth. Two, John Tommy mentioned a common tool that implement that divers use to clean boat bottoms as the Scotch-Brite pad. He's absolutely right when he says it can be used to sand a boat bottom. They are abrasive. They come in a variety of levels of abrasiveness, but any cleaning implement can damage anti-fouling paint if used improperly. The pad that John Tommy pointed out, the medium grade Scotch-Brite pad, absolutely does not cause plumes of paint spewing off into the water when used properly. Any diver who's worth his salt is going to use the proper implement to gently clean the anti-fouling paint and not remove excess paint. And the way to do that is to clean relatively frequently and therefore gently. And again, the pad itself is not a damaging tool when used properly. And it irks me when somebody who does not clean boat bottoms for a living comes into a public forum like this and states as an absolute that hull cleaners are damaging anti-fouling paint and polluting the waters they're working in, because it's absolutely not true, and he has no proof to back it up.
Well, a couple of things. I do and have painted for over 40 years, so you're wrong about that. And I'm also, I just got re-up for my Marina Del Rey commercial services, including the commercial diver endorsement. So some of the things you're saying I don't agree with, are not accurate, but it's not absolute like you were saying, but it's been done in the past. It's still being done. I've seen it. I'm down there enough, and it's still happening. And it's not a thing about what you say or what I say, but it's about, to me, and everyone's welcome to their opinions. But I think it's an enforcement thing that has to be checked out by the county and regional and U.S. EPA, because there is no documentation on any of it. When you say there's no proof, well, there's witness proof, and there's the plumes that are in the water. I showed the graph. That's not happening because that's just what they're doing on their own. That's because there's things happening to the paint, but also the divers. I'm not saying how much the divers do. I'm just saying that it's something to look at. And
yes, but you did. In one breath, you're blaming on the divers. In the next breath, you're saying these paints are, or you're not saying that these paints are leaching 24/7, 365. But you don't mention that. What you say is it's the divers.
I did say that because that's where I was talking about the galvanic action. It's cooking off the metal in the paints. So I did cover that. But anyway.
So this is Jeannie from the State Water Board, and I'm interested in that galvanization that you were talking about. How
galvanic corrosion? Yeah,
galvanic corrosion. How frequently do you think that happens? Is this like a very minor?
It's 24/7.
Well, when the okay.
Go ahead.
No, so I understand that it's 24/7 once it occurs, but how often does it occur for each boat? Or if there's 100 boats in the harbor, is it happening to all of the boats, or is it only a couple of the boats?
Yeah, it's basically all of them for the different reasons I mentioned, and it's 24/7 as soon as the boat's back in the water, because it's got its own electrical system, and then it has the shore power and different voltages, so it's a constant.
But is every single boat in a harbor experiencing or having this problem?
I would say that they're having the problem in two ways. They're either a discharging vessel, which goes to other vessels and trace currents, or they're one that's in a current from another boat and it detaches that way. And that's why I wanted to test the marina to show the voltages on all this and have something that we could document. But we didn't get too far with the county. I was trying to get them to, let's put it together and check it. But these are things that could prove and establish the status of it. That's what I'm trying to offer in this presentation. Is things to look at, and let's try to find a solution.
Okay. Thank you, John Tommy, for that presentation. Unfortunately, we do have to move on to the next presentation. Yeah, no, thank you. That was very illuminating. Okay, so do you just want to touch further? Sure. Yeah, okay. So next we're going to have Kathy O'Brien for our last presentation before we take a break from the Clean Marinas program, San Diego. Let's see. Let's set that up.
So this is intended to really just give an update. So if I go too fast through some of the slides, feel free to comment and slow me back down because some of you have seen pieces of this in the past.
Close that, yeah.
Oh, wait. Here we go. So Clean Marine is a organization that came together back in 2004 really with the intention to get facilities to follow best management practices in all aspects of marina management. This, as a voluntary organization, is a group of private marina owners, government marina operators, and yacht clubs. We have kept in touch with industry associations. So Marine Recreation Association actually in our infant stages was very instrumental in helping us with the administration of the program until we split off of that. And California Harbor Masters and Port Captains joined in with us as well. We do work with the agencies, which is one of the reasons why I'm here today, making sure that for all of the different categories of best management practices that we're looking at, that we have covered the things that are most pertinent to each of the agencies. This year we did some significant rebranding. So we went from Clean Marina to Clean Marine. And a big piece of that focus was because we now have modified our efforts to cover not only marinas but boatyards. As I just mentioned, we did merge with boatyards. Paul Kaplan with KKMI has been very instrumental in helping us put that together. We also updated the score sheets for marinas this year. We added some educational pieces to help marinas with the whole process of getting set up for certification and recertification, and we added some additional point areas. Under solid waste, we are now including points for marinas that include trash skimmers, and in environmental programs, we've added some points for marinas that will host cleanup events. It gets to be quite complicated. They can't just say that they hosted a cleanup event. They have to actually document and give details about that event, from who participated to the levels of trash and areas that were covered during that cleanup. In May of this year, we hired an administrative assistant, and this was to help with the demand and the growing interest in the program. As a volunteer organization, it was getting to be more cumbersome that we could keep up with without having some hired help. We do currently have 11 board members that help with the program and make sure that we're all meeting standards and keeping focused. It is the operation is financed by the marina industry through certification fees. I should have updated this. We also, this year, have a sponsor that is just from the industry that recognized that our efforts were very worthwhile and donated some money to the program. We do work with individuals to train them, both from the standpoint of the facilities that we're helping to certify and as well as having review teams that are qualified to go out and do the inspections. Since we cover all over California and we have some outlying areas as well in Arizona, Nevada, Mexico, Colorado, it does require that we have a substantial team of people that can go out. New certifications require multiple reviewers. Recertifications we do with just one reviewer. The cost for a facility is $750 for the initial certification for a marina, $1,200 for a boatyard. Recertifications drop down a little bit, $500 for a marina and $800 for a boatyard, and we do that every 5 years just to make sure that all of the best management practices are being maintained. Most marina facilities, I have found, at least the ones I've participated with, the management team stays the same from year to year, much long careers with the staff, but that's not always the case. But it does mean that they tend to be on top of this. Once they've been certified, they're watching it on a regular basis. So the recertification process does become fairly easy. We do list we do send them a certificate and give them the ability to use our materials for marketing. We have a website where we list which marinas are certified. We also list if they're pending for recertification, and have a lot of push so that each facility does a lot of boater education in terms of what are the best management practices as far as a boater is concerned. We do have a program manual, both for marinas as well as boatyards. There are two different manuals to give a structure for how to go through and become a certified facility and what type of education we expect them to do and to demonstrate that they're doing it. When it comes to a marina certification, there are 13 different areas that we go through and evaluate, and these are just the different categories. If anybody's interested in more detail on the categories, on the website you can actually download the entire set of score sheets, and it will give you a very detailed breakdown of what is expected for each of the areas. Boatyard's a little different. There's 21 sections to go through, and so it's a lot of time to spend to not only prepare for it. Most of this is, I think facilities are generally ready as far as their practices, but not always well documented. So a lot of effort is putting into documenting that they're actually going through each of these areas to demonstrate that they're adhering to best management practices. Currently, we have 139 marinas and yacht clubs that are certified. We have one boatyard. I got a little carried away here. I said that has been certified. They are in the process. We're 95% of the way through, but we've got to finish up the score sheets to make sure that it's 100% there. It is ongoing with recertifications. This year we've done over 35 recertifications, so it is a significant effort to go through this process. And as I mentioned before, we do cover additional states other than California, and we're also in Mexico. And that was kind of all I had to cover. You know, the big topics for us is the fact that we did do some rebranding and that we've expanded the program not just for marinas but for boatyards as well. Any questions?
How many applicants do you usually get a year? What's your growth rate like?
The growth rate has been, I would say, fairly slow over the last couple of years. I think part of that's due to If you take, for example, just a region, San Diego is pretty much, if you're there, you're certified. I think we've got 2 left to do in San Diego. Even if you take another area, like we're working very closely with Lake Tahoe, so it's not just ocean, it's also lakes and deltas. I think we have 4 and there's 11, so we expect next year from the work that we've done recently that all 11 will be certified. In some areas, we have some additional support to help with encouragement of certification in that in Lake Tahoe, as an example, there are agencies that they report to if they want to do any redevelopment of their facilities. They have to demonstrate that they're a clean marina to get the permits to continue on with the redevelopment. So fair or not, it does help us, and it does help to ensure that everybody is really following the best management practices.
Would you say that's one of the biggest carrots that are out there for trying to get certified?
No, in most cases, the areas, they'll just jump up to the plate and do it.
Okay.
I think it's been about 5 years ago that we had suggestions of the same type of, I'll call it a aggressive nudge in the LA area, but they never went through with it in terms of putting that nudge in place, but we had big success. Is that because the threat was there? Oh, she said the word. Or is it because they were just going to do it anyway? Hard to measure. So we recognize we have more to go. I mean, I think that there's something like 400 and some marinas that are potential, and we're at 139. I mean, that says we have a long ways to go. But I will say that when you look at the numbers of 400 and something, that part of our challenge is some of those are very, very small facilities, and they're extremely seasonal. So it becomes very complex for them to go through the process. This year we've had some Mother Nature assistance, or maybe some other assistance in terms of some marinas that we would have been working with, and the fires went through and there's nothing left. So it'll be a while for them to rebuild before we can go in and do a recertification. So you'll see on the website that they haven't done the recertification, but if you paid attention to where they're located, you'd see that there's nothing. I mean, they just don't have anything for us to go over until they finish rebuilding. So, there's some challenges on all fronts. We will be representing next week at the Marine Recreation Association. So we will have both a booth there so that we're able to talk to all of the attendees that are there, as well as we'll have a floor spot where we get to present a seminar. And we'll do a similar presentation to this, except for when we get into the details of the actual score sheets, we go through several sections and kind of like lead them, coach them. What is the process on each of those sections so they get a feel for it. It's easier for them to go back and jump in and go, oh, yeah, we've got this, we can do it.
Have you had any interest from the East Coast at all, or do they have like a sister program?
There are lots of other programs throughout the United States. In some states, it is run by the state. I don't know any other states where it's purely voluntary as we're doing it in California.
No, this is Vivian. Hi, Kathy. You guys are the only one.
And there are, a few states with no programs at all, which is why sometimes, even though we're California-based, we will go out of California because, they're interested, they want to participate. It's like we'd like to make it happen. It's more challenging because we can't just drive on over. Sometimes it's a plane ride and a couple of days effort to make it happen, but they usually will help work with us and we can make it happen.
This is Jeannie from the State Board, and I really appreciate you being here. I think it's just a good partnership to have, just in case we have new regulations or new paints on the shelf, we can work together to.
And we count on that. We have, over the years, taken direct input, and our score sheets change based on the kind of input that we get.
So really, I think it's really great work that you guys are doing.
Thanks.
So I think you answered the question. I wanted to know how many marinas there are in the state, and you said 400.
It's 400 and something. I can't remember the actual number.
And that's here in California?
Yes.
Okay. And then how long does it take to do a certification? Or I guess the inspection part.
The preparation, that depends on where they're at in the game, but the actual inspection is anywhere from, I think the fastest I've ever done it is 3 hours, and it could take closer to 5 or 6, depending on how organized they are, because we don't say, okay, the only way we're going to do it is you have it all in a book. It's like, if you can lay it out, and I have had this happen where I go in and the entire conference room is covered with materials. It takes a lot longer to go through it because we actually do read details, like if they say it's in their rules and regs number 5, or they'll just say it's in the rules and regs. Like, well, that's not good enough for me. I want to read your rule and reg that says this is what you're doing. Like, for example, at Sun Harbor, we ban doing any fish cleaning on property. So that's where if I was preparing for a reviewer, I would actually show them which page, which item number, and the detailed wording as to the fact that we're banning that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Kathy, Matt with the CPDA here. Just a comment. I earn my living in marinas, and many of them are certified clean marinas. And as a professional hull cleaner, I wish that more of them would require the hull cleaners working in their facilities to at least read the BMPs regarding in-water hull cleaning. It almost never happens, and it would, not for nothing. I mean, the BMPs are in the manual for a reason, but most marinas, at least here in the Bay Area, never display those BMPs to any of the service providers coming on their property.
Okay. I will check with the Northern California area. I can tell you in Southern California that, a lot of it's controlled by some of the other companies. Like, for example, in San Diego, the port has very stringent rules as to what happens. But in other cases, and at many facilities, regardless of where they're located, not only do they require that those BMPs are being followed, but a contractor can't go on facility without a signed contract, which is acknowledging that they are following those rules.
But I understand that's how it's supposed to work. So I've been doing this over 20 years in the Bay Area, and to my best of my recollection, I've only been asked to sign that contract which you speak of by one marina, and that was this summer by Marina Village in Alameda. And I know there are plenty of other clean marinas that I work in where I've never even been questioned about BMP use, much less been shown, the manual for the Clean Marina program.
Okay. Good input.
And how do you think, so the presentation from David Elias, the first presentation, how do you think technology like that could be used by marinas or required to be used or incorporated into the certification?
That's why I was asking some of his questions, is that his system of what he's using, which I think what Matt's comment was as well, is that the cost of that system is something that is so over the top that to see it used in recreational, I think it can be, but it's going to have to be, for example, and I wrote down some notes because I got to go back to talk to the port about what they were looking at with in-water cleaning stations, because it is not my understanding that they are siphoning that water out before the boat leaves. All of the systems that I've looked are not, which suggests that if you're going to put that station in place, you need a system like the first presenter that would do the filtering. I mean, I don't see, having all the water go into the stormwater system, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but filtering it would be a huge improvement. So the question is, can you get things in a controlled zone for doing that? The other extreme of it is, and I'll just use Lake Tahoe as an example, you don't clean the water. You don't clean the boat in the water. End of discussion. Does not happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the boat hauled out. They clean it. They have to trap everything, separate it appropriately, filter it appropriately, and some of it gets hauled off. Some of it goes back after it's been filtered. Is that practical when you get into some of the larger boats? No, you can't necessarily haul out. Like if you look in San Diego with the 5 boat yards closest to me, they're so busy you can't even get in for repairs. How are they going to handle pulling you out for cleaning? So I think that progress is being made, and it's going to take a lot more pushing, and it's going to take some integration with some of the stuff that's already in place to try to make it more effective. Thanks.
Any other questions?
This is Matt with CPDA again. Just to sort of reinforce Kathy's last point about requiring hauling a boat out for hull cleaning. In San Diego Bay, there are approximately 8,000 boats. They're being cleaned around 15 times a year on average. It's over 120,000 haul outs just for hull cleaning every year, which is 328 a day. And that the facilities don't exist for that to happen or anything even close to it. And it's the same pretty much everywhere. It's just not practical to require that. Other solutions need to be found.
Yep.
It sounded like, Vivian, did you have a question, or I heard somebody else online?
Yes, sorry. Kathy, have you heard anything when you do inspection of the marinas about some of the marinas that you have been visiting to have some sort of treatment for gray water, or at least the boats that you have seen lately at your marina?
We have gray water recycling as one of the point areas in the program. I have not personally been to a facility that has had that. I have to believe somebody's got it. It's just not in the set of facilities that I've been to. Mm-hmm. In terms of individual boaters, I can speak to the boaters that, like I'll just use Sun Harbor Marina as an example. They have very strict rules in terms of you're not going to pump overboard anything that's in your bilge that is not clean. So, in fact, that'll go, we keep reinforcing that through handing out materials as well as our newsletter communications that go out to our immediate public to remind them. In fact, I put it in my most current newsletter because it finally rained in San Diego. Novel. So that was my lead into, wow, it rained. Did you check your bilge? Are you sure that your bilge pads that you're using for oil absorbance are clean or ready? Or if you're using some type of microbe, are they still active? Do you need to add more? And then kind of going through the rest of the stages of what they should be careful of. There are a few companies in San Diego that if you have issues with contamination in your bilge, they will come pump it out for a fee and haul it off and dispose of it properly. But I don't know of any station in San Diego that you could actually drive to, much like a pump-out system. I tried to get one of those systems at Sun Harbor and wasn't successful.
Yeah, no, I was just referring to gray water, not bilge water.
Okay. Oh, for gray water, sorry.
No worries.
I only have had one boat that was contained on gray water, and so they had to pump it out just like a regular sewage.
Pump out. Yeah, like a holding tank.
It so far has not been very common in the vessels. Very different if you're on lakes where everybody's going to do pump out of gray water and containment of all gray water.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, we are right on time. Thank you, Kathy, for that presentation. Let's see. We are scheduled to take a break at 12:45, which is right about now. Oh, sorry, not 12, 2:45. for 10 minutes. So let's take a break. I'm going to put this on mute during the break, and we'll be back with a presentation from Kelly Tate and Karen Holman from the Port of San Diego.
Yes. That's true, yeah.
Okay, we're back.
If you don't know you're going to take the vote.
Next, we're going to have a presentation from Carrie Tate and Karen Holman from the Port of San Diego. Kelly and Karen, are you on the line?
Yeah, we're here. This is Kelly. I'm actually going to be giving the presentation, and Karen and myself will be available for questions after.
Okay, great. I'm going to transfer then. Actually, I did want to state really fast that Jeremy Haas from the San Diego Water Board had to leave the call early, but if anybody had questions for the San Diego Water Board for this project, you guys are more than welcome to contact him, and I can provide his contact information. So I'm going to, Kelly, I'm going to grant you control. Is that correct?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Are you bringing up the PowerPoint, or do I bring it up on my end?
On your end. Please.
Okay, great. Did that show up?
I think you just granted her control of her mouse.
Oh. Okay, hold on. Revoke. Okay. Oh, you know what? Yeah, okay. So, oh, I thought you granted control. So, yeah, it's not showing your screen. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? If that's the case, if I can only do that, then I'll just open up the presentation, and then I'll let you run the presentation.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
That'll work.
I can't do that. No. Monday?
Also, if you're not speaking, can you please place your microphone on mute?
Okay, there you go, Kelly.
All right, great. Here we are. So, all right, that looks like I've got control. Great. All right, so I wanted to first introduce myself again if you're just tuning back in. My name is Kelly Tate, and I'm a Senior Environmental Specialist in Environmental Protection at the Port of San Diego, and I'm currently managing our copper reduction program. For those of you guys that are unfamiliar with the TMDL that we have down here at Shelter Island at the Port of San Diego, sorry, I'm trying to get the slide up here. There we go. That's much better for viewing. I'm going to first kind of start this talk to go over a brief overview of the TMDL that we were issued. I'm then going to briefly discuss some of the TMDL milestones that we've had over the course of the TMDL so far. And then I'm going to share with you our most recent water quality and toxicity data from our monitoring events of 2017. We have completed our 2018 monitoring events, but the data is not yet ready. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Shelter Island Yacht Basin's TMDL, our copper reduction program, and statewide efforts that involve copper in the marine environment. All right, so those of you unfamiliar with the TMDL down here in Shelter Island Yacht Basin, it was assigned in 2005, and Shelter Island Yacht Basin, as you can see in that map, is a semi-enclosed basin towards the north end of San Diego Bay. In Shelter Island Yacht Basin, there's 2,363 vessel slips, and the TMDL stated that there is a requirement of a 76% load reduction over 17 years. So it was issued in 2005, and our compliance point is in the year 2022, which is approaching a little bit quicker than it seems when you say it's 5 years away still. In addition to the TMDL, in 2011, the port ourselves were issued a subsequent investigative order, which required monitoring the water quality and the toxicity in Shelter Island Yacht Basin and annually reporting back to the San Diego Regional Board what we found. It was kind of instated as a way to track how the TMDL implementation was working. So to give you a brief timeline of the TMDL from the time it was issued until where we're at now and where we're going. So as I said, it was issued in 2005, and it was broken up into 4 different stages. Stage 1 was looked at kind of as the baseline and was marked as being 2007. And then they set 2 interim compliance pieces where we had to make interim compliance targets in 2012 in the form of a 10% reduction and in 2017 in the form of a 40% reduction. And the last stage, stage 4, is where we have to meet final compliance in 2022 of a 76% loading reduction. Now, the way the TMDL is set up, the TMDL document actually assigns different contributions of copper loading, which again is copper loading into the water by percent. And so the TMDL for Shelter Island Yacht Basin pretty much says that passive leaching from vessels is responsible for 93% of the dissolved copper loading that is happening in Shelter Island Yacht Basin. As you can see, hull cleaning followed with a 5% contribution, and urban runoff and background contributions were very minor, direct atmospheric deposition even more so, and sediment was not included in this TMDL. So, that being the really brief history of our TMDL, I want to move on to talk a little bit about some of the TMDL milestones that we've had in our program to date. So you'll recognize this table from a couple slides ago, but now it's in context of what we've actually done so far. Continued efforts have been underway since we began monitoring and reporting, and really since the TMDL was issued, to identify load reductions from paint, hull cleaning, and also other BMPs that might be being put to use around Shelter Island Yacht Basin. We continue to track the conversion of vessels from copper to non-copper paints or from high copper to lower copper paints. And so much we've had success that on October 10th at their board meeting, the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board confirmed interim compliance when the executive officer summary was discussed at their board meeting and compliance was confirmed. So if you look for stage 2 and 3, we were successful in meeting both of our interim compliance loads. Most recently for 2017, we met our 40% reduction load and exceeded that by actually calculating about a 45.4% reduction. And we can really credit this success thus far to the annual monitoring efforts between both the Port and the Shelter Island Master Leaseholder Group, where load reductions from paint, hull cleaning, and BMPs have all been meticulously recorded. Additionally, as I said before, we're tightening our tracking of vessels as we continue to see an increase in boaters choosing to use the Category 1 paints. And then even more so, which we'll see reflecting in our vessel tracking moving forward, is the Category 1 paint rule going into effect from the DPR of July 1st this past summer. All right, so our TMDL is based on copper loading, and again, that is copper going into the water, or dissolved copper going into the water. The figure that I'm showing you here is our annual copper load estimate in Shelter Island Yacht Basin. You can see on the y-axis we have the annual Shelter Island copper load in kilograms per year, and on the x-axis it's our monitoring year over time. We've got 3 dashed lines here that are representing those interim target goals that I went over previously. This top line being the 2012 target, which really acted as the base, or which required a 10% reduction. The middle line is the 2017 TMDL target line, which required that 40% reduction. And this line down on the bottom is our final TMDL compliance target. You can see both for 2016 and 2017, as well as 2015, we met that 40% reduction target, and we're on track to continue to reduce. We can see that compared to baseline, efforts in loading reduction are continuing annually. The next figure I'm showing is looking at our annual load reductions, which, as I mentioned, we track vessels and look at the types of paints that are on them. We look at vacancies. We look at aged copper. We look at non-copper. And we're able to look at how we're seeing these reductions across the board. We believe that we keep seeing these continued reductions due to the voluntary shift in paints from copper to Category 1 or low copper paints. This can be seen if you look at the purple colored bars. Those represent the high copper paints. And you can see that over time, since 2012, when we first started recording this, that we've seen that colored bar shrinking, which means that the number of vessels that are using those high copper paints are decreasing. At the same time, you can see this really dark green colored bar at the bottom increasing, and that's an increase in the use of Category 1 or those low copper paints. If we saw a bigger use of non-copper paints, the load reduction would be even greater that we've seen. Using the TMDL loading calculations, the Category 1 paints are still contributing 50% load to the basin versus the non-copper paints, which contribute a 0% load. Continuing to conduct a thorough and rigorous annual vessel tracking program is essential to capture the continued movement by the Shelter Island Yacht Basin vessel owners, both to the Category 1 paints and to non-copper paints. It's also going to catch any substantial changes in other load reduction categories, such as occupancies and vacancies and aged copper paints. In 2017, the vessel tracking program actually showed that the number of Category 1 paints increased by 344 vessels compared to 2016. And so it is a really active shift in people using those lower copper paints. Continue efforts like this by both the boaters and by the Shelter Island Master Leaseholder Group in their tracking of this are really going to help us continue to track accurately these loading reductions. So I just mentioned briefly a little bit about how we calculate our loads. A lot of you that are unfamiliar with our TMDL might be wondering how we do that. And so we track the copper load of each individual vessel annually. Each vessel is assigned a category of paint, and each of those categories is assigned a particular load. For example, high copper paints and any boat that's entered in as being unknown as to what's on their bottom, it's considered a full load or a 100% load. Category 1 paints are considered a half load, and non-copper paints, for example, are considered a zero load. The approach was vetted with the regional board prior to the implementation, and our loading reductions were calculated by comparing to the assumptions that are found in the regional board's 2005 TMDL document. Now, these next examples are not all of the assumptions. I just kind of picked out some of the bigger ones that people probably will have questions on. So, for example, some of the assumptions are that all 2,363 shelter island yacht basin slips or buoys are occupied by a number of vessels. Another assumption is that all 2,363 recreational vessels moored within shelter island yacht basin have copper-based paints 100% of the time. It assumes annual loading from passive leaching basin-wide equals 2,000 kilograms per year, and annual loading from hull clean equals 100 kilograms per year, and the average annual loading per vessel with copper hull paints equals 0.9 kilograms per year. So kind of big take-home message here is we take the assumptions that are in that 2005 TMDL document, we assign the load to each of the vessels that are tracked, and we perform the calculations to see where that loading reduction is coming from each year. In addition to the loading, we also monitor for water quality and toxicity. This figure that I'm presenting here is our annual water quality averages basin-wide over the course of our monitoring program and also with the baseline. On the y-axis, we have dissolved copper in micrograms per liter, and on the x-axis, we again have time. The red and green lines show the water quality standards at the state level. The red represents the acute water quality objective, and the green represents the chronic water quality objective, which is 3.1 micrograms per liter. As you can see, our water quality hasn't showed the exact pattern that our loading reduction has. We saw an initial decrease, and then numbers seem to have leveled off over the past several years. And while we have seen that initial decrease, these numbers are still remaining above the acute and chronic water quality objectives. Interestingly enough, overall, toxicity is not very frequent. We have no acute toxicity to fish larvae throughout the entire program. Chronic toxicity has only been observed each year at 1 to 2 stations, Shelter Island Yacht Basin 1 from 2012 through 2017, and Shelter Island Yacht Basin 2 on occasion within a couple of the monitoring years. Many of the successes in reducing copper loading, reducing water quality concentrations, and the minimal toxicities thus far has been the result of efforts made across the board in our copper reduction program. So I'm going to switch gears here. I just was going into a few data-heavy slides, and I'm going to go bigger picture here to an overview of our copper reduction program. The copper reduction program's objective is to reduce copper loading in Shelter Island Yacht Basin and around San Diego Bay. The program has 5 main components, being testing and research, policy development and legislation, education and outreach, monitoring, and data assessment and hull paint transition. This copper reduction program has been critical in the success of not only the entire TMDL program so far, but especially in the last 5 years of meeting our interim compliance phase goal, and it's going to continue to be critical in meeting our final TMDL requirement in 2022. In 2017, we had several key initiatives under our copper reduction program. Just a brief highlight of a couple of them. In addition to our annual monitoring that's required by the IO, we conducted a special study of tidal influence in Shelter Island Yacht Basin. That is the map and the diagram that I have on this slide. Up in the map, you can see we had 3 stations that represented at the mouth of the basin, mid-basin, and at the head of the basin. And we sampled for a full 26-hour tidal cycle every 2 hours to see if we could capture any differences in dissolved copper at the surface over time. And so some of the things we found overall was that we did see some differences depending on location of basin, but there weren't these tremendous differences that one might expect to see. We also looked at copper remediation pilot projects through our Blue Economy Incubator. We have a culvert feasibility assessment that is ongoing. There's a lot of different components to that to see if it's a feasible option potentially to put on the table. And then we also had help at the state level where the Department of Pesticide Regulation copper leach rate rule went into effect July 1st of this year, and we're looking forward to see how that pans out into our data in the next few years as people make these transitions. So the table here is a snapshot of some of the bigger things we've accomplished over the past 5 years in our copper reduction program. The big take-home here is we've done a lot across all of the different components to the program. Just a couple to point out, in policy development and legislation, we supported AB 425 in 2013, which ultimately determined the DPR rule that went into effect July 1st of this year. In testing and research, our Blue Economy Incubator is researching potential alternative technologies. In education and outreach, we've had several different events that targeted voters to be informed about the different types of hull paints that are available. We've put out press releases, we've put out news articles, and we've worked with the state to put out brochures that educate voters on the types of hull paints to choose, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides from now. And then in our monitoring and assessment, like I said, in 2017 we conducted a special study, but we've also conducted a couple of other special studies over the course of the last 5 years to really get a better understanding of overall basin dynamics and trying to fill in the data gaps that have been previously identified from our annual monitoring events. Moving forward to Shelter Island Yacht Basin and how it's involved in statewide efforts. So I mentioned on a couple of slides about the DPR rule that went into effect on July 1st of 2018. Many of you on the phone are probably well versed in it. So just as a quick review, if some of you aren't, the Category 1 copper paint rule went into effect and states that only low leaching copper paints are available for recreational boats. It applies at the point of sale, and what we did was took this new rule, we took our data from the previous year's monitoring for Shelter Island Yacht Basin, and we tried to calculate to see where this new rule might get us in achieving our TMDL goal. So we assumed a 3-year life average cycle for paints, and we found that with this new DPR rule, it has the potential to get us to about a 61% loading reduction by 2021. Now, that is tremendously helpful compared to where we would be going or where we'd be trying to get to without this rule. But as you can see, we still have about a 15% delta, even with the DPR rule, to achieve our TMDL compliance. So there's still work to be done. Most recently, in September of this year, we have begun again collaborating with the Department of Boating and Waterways and the LA Beaches and Harbors program to update the Boater's Guide to Using Hull Paint in California. Changes will reflect the new DPR rule, and we can expect it to be released either late winter or early spring of this coming year. Lastly, as we continue ahead, we're continuing to improve our understanding on hull cleaning and hull paints, and we're also continuing to research alternative mechanisms that might help in meeting our TMDL compliance requirement. And with that, we will take any questions.
So this is Jeannie from the State Water Board, and I don't have any questions, but I love all the monitoring that you're doing and the tracking that you're doing, and that's great information.
Thank you.
This is Mike Hanks at the State Water Board. Earlier in the presentation, you were showing a curve of copper monitoring, and it seemed to be curving downward so that it was no longer, the amount of copper produced was no longer accelerating, and it seemed to be bottoming out. And you talked about your projections of the 15% delta later. So it seems like, I'm just curious about what is projected to make it to that 76%, and if that seems to still be a reasonable goal for you to achieve.
Right. It's definitely going to take work. That is no secret. But we have a really engaged community down here. We have the Shelter Island Master Leaseholder Group that works very closely with us on a lot of our initiatives. And the important thing is everybody knows what the program is, knows what the target is, and we all share the same goal. And so the DPR rule is going to help us get tremendously closer to that goal, but it's still going to need continuing to have additional conversions or additional BMPs or other strategies to help further reduce the copper loading.
ignorant question here. Does the CFAR rule, does that mean you cannot purchase or sell that type of paint, any other kind of paint, or does it mean you can't apply that paint? In other words, if there's a backlog of paint somewhere, can that still be used?
Good question. So I know, Aniela, do you mind if I toss this one over to you?
Yes. So as of July 1st, 2018, from the first point of sale in California, you can no longer buy the high leach rate paints, which is above the leach rate of 9.5 micrograms per centimeter squared per day. So yeah, like coming into California, you can't buy those. However, there is already an existing stock of paints that were already purchased by boatyards to sell to boaters. They have 2 years to use that existing stock, to use or sell that existing stock. So basically use it because they apply the paint. And so that gives them till 2020. However, once those are used up, they can no longer, they have to switch over to the low leach rate paint.
Okay.
So this is Ray Heimstra with Coastkeeper. I just have a quick question about the alternative paints. So what types of alternative paints are being used, and how often are they being applied?
Good question. So we have found that if I go back to a few slides here, it'll be in the beginning, but where I broke down and showed the different types of copper loading, we're almost there. Bear with me here. All right, so in terms of alternative paints, are you referring to non-copper paints?
Yeah, most specifically. So it looks like the low copper rate's going to get you most of the way there, but it looks like you're still going to need some of the other non-copper paints too. Exactly.
And so if you look at the bar graph that I just put back up, that really light kind of gray line it looks like on the screen that is one above the dark green at the bottom, that represents boaters in Shelter Island Yacht Basin each year that are reporting using non-copper paints. And so you can see there is a small fraction of people that are using them. I'd have to go back and look in the report to give you the exact number. It sits, I think, around about 100 or so, maybe less. And that kind of average has been holding steady throughout the years. So really what we're going to need to see is either alternative mechanisms or a jump in that number to really get us to that 76%.
So, Ray, this is Karen. Let me add on to that. You know, we did that 319H grant several years ago, and we're successful in getting a lot of people to use those alternative paints through that grant. Not as successful as we hoped, but we did get a number of people to change over. Basically, since that time, we really haven't seen a lot of conversions or, wholesale use of those alternative non-biocide products. And I think it's a little bit unfortunate, but a lot of it really has to do with the cost difference, which a lot of our earlier studies showed. It highlighted that those paints aren't as cheap as the copper paints, and some of the application process and the cleaning help drive those costs up. So I think kind of for the whole boating community, we do have to kind of continue our efforts and looking at how we can encourage the use of those non-biocide alternatives.
Sure. So I guess to be more specific is if a boater wants to get a non-copper paint applied on their boat in San Diego tomorrow, can they go someplace and there's a product and they can get that applied?
It's my understanding, I'm not a boatyard rep, but it's my understanding that yes, they could. The boatyards are familiar with the non-biocide alternatives. They were big pieces to our grant project. And so they probably, if they don't have them on stock, I know they don't keep a lot of paints on the shelf. If they don't have them on stock, they can easily get them, and their staff over there are familiar with the stripping and the application processes.
Thanks. Yeah, because one of the things I'm just continuing to hear is that there's no viable alternative to copper paints, and so I just wanted to see if so at least in San Diego, a boater is able to go and get an alternative to copper paints and have that applied. So
I think the key on that, Ray, is that word viable, and the interpretation of what viable means may not be the same to everyone. You know, I think for a lot of people, viable means it needs to be as similar in cost as copper. You need to clean it the same as copper. It's the same things that we looked at several years ago when we were doing those that EPA grant funded project to see, you know, how to determine viable options. And a lot of that had to do with the application process, the cost of the paint itself, and the cleaning piece. So, you know, there are products out there that work. They need a little bit more cleaning, but they can work effectively. And so it's really just, you know, a boater's comfort in wanting to do that. And from what we understand, those non-biocides tend to last longer if treated properly.
Thanks.
Speaking as somebody who is boots on the ground in the marinas with boat owners as customers dealt with every day, I would argue that the reason non-toxic anti-fouling coatings haven't gotten much traction is because they are not effective. And yes,
right.
they require more maintenance. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I agree. It's a matter of opinion on how those work and everything. That's why I said the real crux of that is, you know, what people's perception of a viable product is.
I might be able to help out. If you all can hear me, this is Greg Shem at the Boatyard, Marina Del Rey. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hear you.
Okay. First time I said anything, so I didn't know if it was working. You know, there's got to be a little clarity here because there's a big difference between alternative to copper and a non-biocide. There are a lot of paints out there that are non-copper that you can buy and put right over the copper. There's Echinacea as an alternative biocide, and they work pretty well. We have a lot of customers that go that route. So there's non-copper alternatives that are out there today that work just fine. When you talk about non-biocide, that's a whole different world. Now you're talking about something that's got nothing in it to inhibit the growth, and those have not been very successful. They are much more expensive to apply, and the cleaning, at least here in Marina Del Rey, and Michael Tripp is on the line, he might be able to help out on some of his experience in the test program, but the cleaning is got to be a lot more frequent than what people are accustomed to, probably at least once every 2 weeks, maybe more frequently, and it's much more difficult to clean. So the difference is really pretty dramatic. You know, there are alternatives to copper out there today that work quite well.
Yes, Greg, I agree with you. When we did our studies, we looked at those other types of the Echinacea and even the zinc-based products, and those are out there, and they're out there today. That's correct. So as a boatyard rep, you're absolutely correct that there's things that are different than just the non-biocides that people could use.
Yeah, I just worry that with some of these products, that maybe we're kicking the can down the road a bit, and that we don't really know the effect of Echinacea. As I understand, it's some kind of a pharmaceutical, and that might have the same or even worse effects than copper, but certainly they're effective.
Okay. Thank you, Karen and Kelly. That went a little bit over, but I think it was an important conversation to have. If you are not speaking, please put your phone on mute because I can hear myself talking. Yeah. We have one more presentation from Marin Farnham and from from the Marine Invasive Species Program. Let me just set them up. Are you guys on the line?
Hi there, Mike. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
So I'm going to take the screen share away.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on one sec.
So can you grant the access to me, to Lina?
Yeah.
One moment. Hold on.
Okay. And Lina Ceballos would be the one to have the access because we're in Lina's office. Thanks.
Shared application. presentation.
Lena, I think I just promoted you. You should be able to accept and then present yourself.
Oh, are you going to put the presentation that you have, or should I open it from my computer?
If you accept the promotion, you should do it on your own screen, because we're going to be looking at your screen rather than mine.
We didn't get it.
I can definitely do it from my side if that's too much.
Or Mike, how do we accept the promotion? Sorry, we're not.
Should have been a pop-up.
No. It's just automatic. So all you have to do now is go to screen share at the top and click that. And if you have to, if a window pops up and says it has to install a bunch of things, then we'll just share it. We'll do it from our computer. But try hitting screen share.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
And then something pops up, and you should be able to share your presentation if you have it open on your computer, or you can share your desktop.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, we have it. We have it open, and the screen share tab is on.
Sorry, I think that was my fault.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, while it's pulling up, do you want? I can sort of start by introducing us, and why don't I can go ahead and do that while this is.
I don't know how to share it.
I think it says please wait for the presenter to share an application.
What? Okay.
Is it Kelly or Lena's computer?
It's Lena.
Okay, go to Lena and promote her.
Yeah.
You did Kelly.
Oh, I did Kelly?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I thought I did Lena. I don't think that's going to work.
You can open up and.
Lena is talking.
Right, but I don't. Her name's not showing up. She's at the bottom.
It was showing up a minute ago.
Yeah, you disappeared.
Oh, it's here. Wait.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, no, she's promoted. She should be.
Yeah, you're promoted.
But I don't see how to share. It doesn't give me the option to share my screen.
Okay.
So if you open it and then give me
I'm going to open it up on mine and give you control. Okay? Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so let's open it real fast.
Well, as that's pulling up, I'll just take this opportunity to introduce ourselves real quick here. My name is Maren Farnham, and I'm an environmental scientist here with the Executive Office of the California State Lands Commission. And I'll be presenting today with Lena Ceballos, Senior Environmental Scientist with our Marine Invasive Species Program, which is within our Marine Environmental Protection Division here at the Commission. And so we'll be going over a couple of different program areas here at the Commission. Lena is going to provide everyone with an update on the Commission's biofouling management regulations, which I think are a subject that you guys have had some presentations on before in past MIACC meetings by Chris Shiani and perhaps other scientists from our commission. So Lena will give an update about the biofouling management regulations, and then I'm going to share a little bit about a new pilot that we've begun with the Port of San Diego to better understand ocean uses offshore of San Diego County and collect information that will help us and the other resource managers, other ocean users, and the public to make science-guided decisions within that ocean space. So as part of that effort, we've developed an interactive web mapping application with publicly available data sets within it, and that's what I'm going to preview for you a little later in the presentation. So I think we're
you have control. Yeah.
Set? Have control? Yeah. And we'll just give our screen a moment to pull up here. And okay, hopefully you are all seeing our presentation screen now.
Okay, thank you, Maren. So as Maren said, I'm Lena Ceballos, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the biofouling management regulations in California. So first, why we regulate biofouling and what's the risk. So we all know, or we have a lot of information about ballast water. So we know that in an average discharge, we could find a potential of about 76,000 invertebrates that arrive to our waters. But then when we start looking into biofouling, like each single niche area could hold more than 100,000 invertebrates. And that's a lot of animals if we think about that the average niche area of the vessels arriving in California is about 1,000 square meters. So that's a really big risk that before we were not taking into account. So, and I also wanted to point out that some studies have showed that the animals that are arriving in this attached to the vessels, they are alive and ready to reproduce. So this study in 2013 showed that about 95% of the organisms attached to the hulls were alive, and that more than 91% of the mussels had developed gonads, and about 25% of the barnacles have egg masses. So what this means is that they are ready to reproduce as soon as they arrive here. So as you may all know, California approved biofouling management regulation in April 2017, and they became effective on October last year. And I wanted to point out that California was the first state and country to implement these regulations. For this reason, we kind of in the target from other countries and other states that want to learn from us and follow what we have been doing. So this is really important. So the implementation of the regulations is based on the scheduled dry docks of the vessels. So it's applicable to all vessels that have had the last dry dock on or after January 2018, or new vessels after January 2018. And also, I just wanted to remind that this is applicable only to big vessels, like 300 gross tons or above. So it's not for recreational boat. So why we do a phase-in implementation? Basically because we know that the most effective biofouling management is, it happens during the dry dock. So that's when the owner and the management needs to happen, and it needs to be planned at that moment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the main components of these regulations. So the vessels are now required to have a biofouling management plan and a biofouling record book. They also require to submit to California State Lands Commission an annual vessel reporting form, like for the first arrival to California every calendar year. And this form includes information about anti-fouling coatings and management actions, was the vessel profile, the previous residency periods, and things like that. They also need to include in their management, in the biofouling management plan, how they're going to manage all the wetted surface areas of the vessel, including the niche areas. And they also need to specify and have knowledge of the effective lifespan of the coatings applied to the vessel during the last dry dock. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. So the inspection and enforcement process that we are starting to do is based on a prioritization. I hate that word. So pretty much all the vessels that are arriving to California are high priority for their first arrival, and we use that opportunity to do outreach and about the new regulations. And very soon we're going to start using a weight risk assessment, which is based on the data that the vessels report to us in their annual vessel reporting form. And using that, we assign some scores to the vessels and we determine if they are high, medium, or low risk for inspections. So the inspections at this point are focused on reviewing their biofouling management plan and the biofouling record book. Also, our field specialists are trained to do outreach to the vessel crew, and with the data that they are collecting, we assess the industry knowledge about the regulations. We also, in these regulations, included a 60-day grace period for vessels that don't have the biofouling management plan complete, or they're missing some aspects of it. So we give them 60 days to comply with the regulations. So some preliminary results in this year that since we started with the biofouling regulations, we have inspected about 45 vessels since August, and about 30 grace periods have been issued. And most of the things that we have been finding is that the vessels are not including the niche area management on their biofouling management plans, or they don't know their effective coating lifespan. Some less common deficiencies is that they either don't have a management plan or a biofouling record book, but that's not as common. So we have identified some areas that we have some gaps and we need to improve. So as I mentioned before, the expected coating lifespan. And what this means is that the coating that is applied to the vessel has a service life that is determined by the manufacturer at the time that it's applied to the vessel, and they need to know how long that coating is going to be effective. And a lot of the times the vessel crew is not aware of this information. The other piece of information that we found that is lacking is vessels are not aware of the risk that the out-of-water support strips have for biofouling. So what this means is that when the vessel goes out to dry dock and the anti-fouling coating gets applied, it sits on blocks. The support blocks don't get any, or the area above the supporting blocks don't get any anti-fouling coating. So that becomes a hotspot for biofouling. So, and the vessels need to understand that they have to manage this as one of their niche areas. So we're doing some follow-up with more targeted outreach to the agents and the industry, so we can cover these knowledge gaps on those specific aspects of the management. So lessons that we have learned is that we have two different approaches. We're used to ballast water, where the crew is the one responsible for all the ballast water management actions, but with biofouling, the ownership or the management are the ones responsible for developing a management plan. So we need to approach this in a slightly different way. And with that, I will pass it on to Marin, and at the end, I will take some questions if you have.
Thanks, Lena. So, yeah, we'll be switching gears here a little bit, but please do, we'll be around for questions after the presentation. So Lena will be here too. So I'm going to just very briefly share with everyone a little bit about a pilot project that we've begun with the Port of San Diego. And just to describe it, the State Lands Commission is responsible for the management of public trust lands that are from the tidelands and the submerged lands of the state. And that's an ambulatory boundary on land, usually measured by about the mean high tide line. And it goes out to 3 nautical miles into the ocean. Some of those lands are granted by the state legislature to local jurisdictions like ports and harbor districts to manage those tidelands and submerged lands within their jurisdiction, to do the day-to-day management of them. So this is a really unique collaborative partnership between the State Lands Commission and one of those granted lands partners, the Port of San Diego. And the point of our effort is to try and gain a greater understanding and awareness of the vast variety of ocean uses that take place in the offshore space off of San Diego County, and understand better about the relationships and dynamics between those uses. This ocean planning effort is not centered around any one specific use. Its intent is not to create any additional zoning or regulatory measures within this ocean space. It's really to understand it better and then to be able to use that information to inform our own decision making. And we hope that we've created some things here that will also help others inform their own decision making, whether that's for resource management or just as an ocean user themselves. So I'll talk a little bit about this space and the MOA that we signed with the Port in 2016 to outline our partnership. So we signed an MOA with the Port of San Diego. The map here shows some of those granted lands area of the port within San Diego Bay, and our effort is going to be taking place outside of San Diego Bay, but we understand that all of these uses generally connect back to bays, marinas, harbors, again, those near-shore places. So we want to sort of create a better understanding of what goes on inside and outside of the bay. We are committed in this partnership, and it's outlined in the MOA, to a transparent and robust public engagement process. It's really meant to be stakeholder-driven, so I'll talk a little bit about our public engagement in just a minute. We are going to together explore tools and processes that can reduce the potential for conflict among different public trust uses. And then we're also considering ways to effectively and responsibly inform decision making. So this effort is centered on gathering information from really two different areas. One is, again, through our stakeholder and public engagement. We've held focused individual one-on-one stakeholder meetings with over 130 stakeholders at this point, and those comprise of folks both local, regional, state, and federal agency partners, as well as community members, folks from different ocean sector use areas that correspond generally with the public trust, so folks from the shipping industry, commercial and recreational fisheries, recreational ocean users, folks involved in conservation and environmental stewardship and protection, as well as those involved in navigation and safety, and in particular, the U.S. Navy, who has a very large footprint over the entire offshore area of San Diego. We're also embarking on a data collection effort to create an interactive, public-facing, and free web mapping application that anyone can use, and it will contain spatially referenced data for this offshore ocean space. And that's actually what I'm going to spend the rest of my presentation giving you a little preview of. We hope to be able to, after some beta testing of this web mapping application, be able to release it for public use in 2019. So our partnership is centered around, again, the public trust uses that we both manage throughout this ocean space. And they fall into these different categories: navigation, commerce, fisheries, recreation, and environmental stewardship. And we've been collecting publicly available data sources on each of these use types. So for instance, for navigation, some examples of the data sets that we have in our web mapping application include navigational aids, wrecks and obstructions. For commerce, we've got different data sets related to alternative and renewable energy potential, and for existing oil and gas operations. For fisheries, some of the examples of the data sets that we have in here are the locations of fishing piers and jetties, as well as some fishing vessel density information. For recreation, we've got things in there like dive sites, boat launch sites, public access points. We also have, for instance, public transportation routes that connect to those public access points. And for environmental stewardship, some of the examples of the data sets that we have in there include the potential extent of canopy-forming kelp and other habitats that are important to those ecosystems, as well as, for instance, the National Wetland Inventory. So here's just some screenshots I'll walk you through of what our application looks like. What you can see on the screen now is the general extent of our preliminary ocean planning boundary. We say preliminary because we do intend, again, for this to be a stakeholder-driven effort. So if we hear from our stakeholders that, there are certain areas that are not as important to them, but others that are, we want to be responsive to that, and we can, change this boundary to fit the needs of the stakeholders and those that will be using this tool. But again, it's originally sort of conceived as a state waters tool. So that's what it covers currently. Then I'll just show you, we've got a legend here on the side. This is just where you would, of course, find the information about what you're visually looking at, how those data layers are visually represented. So for instance, on our screen here, those green circles correspond to individual leases issued by the California State Lands Commission, as well as we've got dive sites identified here. We have the marine protected areas layer turned on here, so you can see those. We've also got some of those canopy-forming kelp data set layers turned on as well right now. This tool also has, or the web mapping application, I should say, also has a toolbar with a number of tools and widgets that the user is free to use. And this is really what helps you interact with the data here, be able to visualize different data sets together and find out information that you're looking for. So we've got certain features here, such as our reporting feature, so you can select a certain area and the data sets that you'd like to see in that area, and it'll pump out a report for you for all that's available. We also have things like measuring tools, the sliding tools so that you can see a particular ocean space with some data sets turned on and what it looks like with those data sets turned off, as well as a number of other tools and features there. Again, just to let you know a little bit about how we've organized the data sets for this web mapping application. They're organized, again, by those large public trust use categories that we mentioned earlier. So, again, that's navigation, commerce, fisheries, recreation, and environmental stewardship. However, you can visualize data with this web mapping application from all of those different categories. You can have things turned on at the same time from different categories, but we just thought this would be a helpful way to sort of, organize them into some different buckets. So finally, I just wanted to show an example of what you can do with that screening widget. So here, an area has been selected close to the city of Imperial Beach with some particular data sets turned on. We selected that area, we buffered it out about a quarter of a mile, and then we're able to produce a report that shows what data sets are in that area and the metadata information from them. I should also mention we do have robust metadata to accompany all of the data sets that are in here, so you can quickly find the source of that data, and how it was developed and vetted and all of that information. And again, all the sets that we have right now are from public agencies. And I guess I'll just make a pitch here. We do include data here in this web mapping application on water quality, vessel density and traffic, things like that. But we would be particularly interested to include more that we don't have yet. So if anyone on the line knows of data from your particular agency or wherever you work that you think may be really useful for folks to be able to access in sort of this one-stop shop area, please let us know. And then the other thing I'll just say before we go is that this is a pilot with the Port of San Diego. They've been a great local partner because they have wonderful local relationships with a lot of stakeholders. And we are exploring the possibility of embarking on a similar project like this in other areas of the state as well. But it's early days so far. So we do have a draft preliminary assessment report that folks can check out from now through the end of this week that describes in more detail and summarizes our stakeholder outreach efforts to learn more about the ocean space and ocean planning in general and what benefits people would like to see out of a process like this. And it also in there describes all of our data sources for the web mapping application, and it's really just kind of an initial check-in point. We'd like to hear people's feedback before we go along much further. So again, we'll just thank everybody for joining us today, and Lena and I's contact information is here on the screen, and we're happy to take any questions that anyone might have now on the phone, or again, feel free to get in touch with us anytime after the presentation. Thanks.
Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is a question for Lena. Hi, this is John from PMSA. First, I want to say I appreciate the Commission's patience in rolling out the biofouling regulations, since it's unique to our state and brand new to our industry. So I appreciate the fact you're working with the vessels, trying to get them on board. I did have one. It was a little bit concerning to hear that a lot of the vessels don't have any idea about the effective lifespan of their coatings. I'm curious, when they're getting their coatings applied at dry dock, typically they'll get a certificate outlining the information about the coatings. Can the lifespan be derived from that, or is there additional information such as thickness of coating or the profile of the vessel that would be required to develop that lifespan?
Okay. So, yes, it was a little bit surprising to us as well, but what we have been finding is that either this certificate is not included in the biofouling management plan, so the crew doesn't know about it, or it doesn't have the specific information that we're looking for. So there are two different things, which is the coating maximum lifespan. But there is another thing, is when the coating is applied to the vessel at a specific thickness, that gives it a specific lifespan for that application. And that information is not easily accessible, at least by the crew members. So what they have to do is either contact the manufacturer and the owner of the vessel, and they probably have this information somewhere. It's just not in their biofouling management plan.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this is Kathy O'Brien. The other factor, or you're just looking for what the maximum life is because the way the hull's been cared for, what water bodies it's been in, how active the boat is, all those things are going to influence what the lifespan is.
Yeah, exactly. So when the owner of the ship meets with the manufacturer before applying any coating, they have to discuss what's the vessel's profile, and that's exactly what you say, like the speeds, where do they go, what's their residence's expected residence time, and all that is influencing the decision about how thick they have to apply the coating. So that decision should be made based on those specific vessel characteristics.
This is Aniela Brandt from Department of Pesticide Regulation. For a lot of the, at least copper anti-fouling paints, either on the label or the technical data sheet, there is a dry film thickness and a corresponding number of coats that are provided on those, usually for a lot of different paints. So that might be able to be like a start. However,
go ahead.
Yeah, but there's, sometimes different vessels will go under the specified number of coats or dry film thickness, but it's a start.
That's exactly what you say. Some vessels decide to apply less because it's cheaper or whatever, and then they need to specify it on their management plan how they're going to deal with that. If you use your coating beyond the expected lifespan, they need to have other management actions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hey, I think Vivian signed off, but she just wanted to let you guys know that for the Ocean Planning Partnership, you should check in with the Department of Boating and Waterways regarding boat launch ramps for an extensive mapping system for those facilities. Yeah,
Thanks.
you're one of your data layers.
Yeah, we believe we did have an interview with them as one of our stakeholders, but we'll definitely and I believe our data comes from their data set, but we will get back in touch with them as well because it's entirely possible things have been updated, and it sounds like they have a really great resource there. So we definitely want to draw upon any of those great efforts that have already taken place so that we can easily integrate them into our web mapping application, and it's just another place for someone to access the information. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, we're right at the end here, and so I'm going to cut this presentation. Thank you so much for that. I think that was very, very important. Just while we still have a minute here, just like to close out the meeting, I'd like to thank everybody that came in today, everybody that presented. I would love to know if anybody has any presentation topics that they'd like to hear at the next meeting, and also if there is people feel open to having another on-site meeting as we did 6 months ago in Southern California. There was talk before about possibly having a meeting in the San Francisco Bay area or in the Santa Cruz area, and just want to see if people think we could get better attendance and different stakeholders coming in than normally do if we hold another meeting in a separate location other than Sacramento. If nothing immediately comes to mind, you're more than welcome to contact me and let me know when it comes to you. Okay. Is there anything else anybody wants to say before we sign off? Any closing statements? No? Okay. Well, once again, thank you everybody for coming, and thank you all our presenters, and until next time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd love to
The host has left the meeting, so at this time, the meeting will come to an end. Thank you and goodbye.